All right, guys, we're gonna start on the board today and go over the basics of what we're gonna be doing. So I've got our vase shape drawn and our 3 focuses. We're looking for balance, especially focusing on that symmetry. We're gonna work with color coordination, making sure things are evenly spaced out and used on all sides. That really relates and shows off that symmetry. And then also our shape. We're going for that rounded dome shape. We're gonna start today with our vase and we're gonna fill it with water. I would aim for at least 3/4. And then before we even talk about the arrangement, I wanna remind you a few key things about water management. We do want anything that's gonna be under the water line to be naked, clean stems. This means that we wanna check as we're creating it, the stems that we have then cut to size and we're about to place. Is there pollen dust that we need to wipe either with our hands or with a paper towel? Or are there leaves that are attached that are gonna be sitting in that water that we need to remove? Anything in here should just look like a single stick. The other thing is to maintain our arrangement and make its lifespan a little bit longer. We need to change the water, which means every other day or so, we wanna take the arrangement out, dump the water, clean the vase, and replace that water. Remember, we always want cold water, okay? That will really help. If you have floral food packets, you can add it, but honestly, floral food also helps the bacteria grow, so if you're just putting plain water, it will really help. You're gonna wanna adjust that depending on your situation for where you're putting the arrangement. If the flower vase is gonna be somewhere that has extreme sunlight or extreme heat, like a window, your living room next to a fireplace or heater, or in the kitchen where the stove is cooking all the time, you might have to do this every day. Versus if you're putting it somewhere that is cooler, away from the light, away from the heat, you might not have to do it until every 3 days or so. Just be mindful of it and watch it. If you're noticing a color change where it's no longer clear, and especially if the water level is going down due to evaporation, that should be your signal to change it. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to our arrangement. Today we're gonna start with our greenery, our tree fern, and we're gonna do something called collaring the vase. Sounds pretty simple. Your neck is round, your vase is round. Your collar is up here all the way around your neck. We're gonna collar all the way around the vase, which means we're gonna put pieces of tree fern that line around the whole outer edge of the vase. This is kind of a nice wispy piece of plant material, so we do want some hanging out. How much is really up to your personal preference. Some of you like it a lot, some of you don't. As long as it's slightly off the edge, we're okay. So if this was the bird's eye view, I have pieces the same size-ish, because we're also going for that symmetry, all the way around this edge of the vase. In doing this, as we trim it, you'll see when I demonstrate for you, we should have a pile of leftovers, pieces that are too small to do this part, that wouldn't just fall into the water on their own. We're not gonna throw those away, we're gonna save them to put in between the flowers as we move along. Tree fern is really nice because technically it doesn't need water to really survive. It dries and stays very well true to color. So we're gonna work on that. So that is step number 1. Step number 2, we are gonna work with our main flowers today, which are our mums. Both our main and our filler flower are clusters. There's multiple blooms on a single stem. So some of those lower pieces are big enough, have a long enough stem, that we could cut them and separate them from the main and still use them, and they would work just fine. So you're gonna wanna process your stems, pulling off or cutting off those larger pieces until you get closer to the top where they're too small to do that, then we're gonna leave that as a whole. What I want you to do, you should have 3 stems of it. I want you to take those whole pieces that have multiple blooms still, and I want you to put those in here first. We want to, since we have 3 of them, create a triangle around the vase. So I should have 1, 2, and 3 for placement. We're gonna wait on those little pieces for just a moment, and we're gonna do the same to our filler flower, the Monte Cassino. We're gonna process it. We're gonna take those bigger clusters that are left intact, and we're gonna place them in between our first clusters. Now what we should have left is a little pile of extra tree fern, a little pile of extra mums, and a little pile of extra Monte Cassino. What I want to do with all of that is fill in our center, but I want to achieve this dome shape, so I need to have some height. So what I'm gonna start with is actually some of the leftover tree fern. That gives us a nice little pillow, and it has all those wispy things that kind of act like hairs and they catch on. Even if they're too short to get into here, I can add some base, and then I can feed in my extra flowers and they will hold in their shape. So I'm gonna lay the groundwork, and then I'm gonna come in with my pieces and fill in this gap. With anything left over, I'm gonna continue to rotate around to really make sure I'm achieving the symmetry. If I need more of something, I'm gonna take care of that as I go around. Maybe it's more tree fern that you notice, maybe stuff shifts as you're creating it. Whatever you need to do, we wanna have the entire side be symmetrical and then this rounded shape. And that's really it. Before you're totally done and take your photo, double check for your colors. We have purple, white, and green. We wanna make sure that we're not dominating one side to the other or all the top to the bottom. We want evenly spaced purple and white as much as possible. All right, let's get into it. Today we're gonna create an arrangement that is round in shape. You either have a bubble vase that has this lip, or you just have the straight round. They're roughly the same opening size, so our supplies are exactly the same. They're almost the same height. The bubble's just a little bit taller. I just didn't have the exact amount in both, but either way, this shape and style is the same. You don't need to do anything to the vase except to add water. And then we've got supplies today. We have tree fern, which is nice and fluffy. We have an assortment of mum. We also call these pomps or CDNs in purple and white. And then your filler today is Monte Cassino. You also have this in purple and white. I ran out of white, so there's a couple of you that have two stems like me of the same purple. But this kind of has some duality, so that's cool. So those are your supplies today. We're gonna go ahead and get started and show you what we're doing. Remember, our focus today is our shape. We also want balance. We're focusing on symmetry. Since this is round, we want to see it all sides the same. And then we're just working on our color coordination. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. My biggest tip and trick when designing with a round arrangement, especially when symmetry is the focus, is to use a Lazy Susan or a turntable. These are super cheap. You can even find some plastic ones at the Dollar Tree. But this allows me to continually rotate it without moving the actual vase in the arrangement, which I can then sometimes disturb it. So if you have one of these at home or something that could act like it, I highly recommend it. What we're gonna do today is what we call collaring around the vase. So we're gonna use our greenery and we're going to trim and add pieces all around the lip of the vase. I wanna save a few of the extra, especially the smaller pieces, to add in as extra filler to separate our flowers later. But we need to set our baseline, and we want this stuff is nice and fluffy. We want a little bit of it drooping and hanging down. How much is really up to you and your personal preference of what you like. But these tree ferns lend themselves to being able to be broken into several different pieces, especially with such a smaller vase like this. Obviously, if all it's gonna do is like this piece is just fall in the vase, there's nothing to hold it up, don't use it, because we do want clean water as we deal with the arrangement. I'm saving all these little pieces for later. I've created a nice collar around. It's nice and airy still. It's gonna continue to move until we really fill in the gaps, but I have it pretty evenly spaced, so I'm ready to go ahead and move on. All right, our next piece is gonna be our main flowers. We're gonna save our filler Monte Cassino for the end. And I'm gonna do pretty much like I did the tree fern. I'm gonna take each of these stems and cut off what I can use separately that'll be long enough, and then save the rest. I also am removing leaves that would be below the water line because we want naked stems going in the water. from here, I've got 3 main pieces and I have a round base. So I'm gonna go ahead and place them triangularly around, but also weaving. You'll see in the lower part in the vase, I'm trying to weave these stems, crisscrossing them, so that it helps hold itself up. So I'm kind of creating a triangle shape with those main broader pieces of flower. I'm gonna save my little guys for just a moment and switch over to our filler today, the Monte Cassino. I wanna get some filler in between our mains, and then I will go back to my extra pieces, including greenery, to fill in our gaps, which will be mostly in the center, but also throughout. Just like the mums, I'm gonna pull off what is big enough to be used on its own. I'm gonna get rid of dead or broken pieces, and I'm gonna cut off the main cluster and save. This will be one that I'll use in just a second. At this point, if you do have the 2 colors of Monte Cassino, you want to change up where you're placing. We're trying to spread all the color out and make it as balanced as possible. So my biggest gap, I've now used all 3 components. Now I just need to finish off our shape. So my biggest gap is here in the center. So what I would like this arrangement to look like is somewhat of a dome shape and still maintain that symmetry so that it's the same on all sides. So what I'm gonna do is work with my leftover flowers, both my main and my filler, to fill in the center. And then I'm gonna take my pieces of greenery to really make sure that everything is separate and not touching. We don't want a lot clustered together without that greenery bringing this airiness. This is going to be airy at the end though, so don't feel bad about leaving some empty space. We just want to try to fill in the big holes. And if you have a flower that has not yet opened, it will, so don't panic about using that. It'll help extend the life of your arrangement overall, so I would continue to use them. Struggling with keeping things in place and it's really bothering you, use the extra greenery kind of like a pillow or even like glue. The flowers will grip to and hang on to these little hairs of greenery, and as long as the very bottom of the stem is touching water, you'll be okay. So you can even put a couple together and kind of build it up and create this networking that you can feed that flower through. Continue to rotate it. If you feel like you need more greenery around the edges, go ahead and place it. If you feel like your clusters are too much, like for me, my white one is so much more compared to my purples, you can go ahead and trim out extra flowers, up to you, so that you achieve that balance. But you don't have to use all the supplies. We're looking for balance and shape. So if you're happy with it, you can stop. rotate it around several times. I like my placement, I like my height, and I like to have this green, the tree fern kind of just being fluffy and hang out the top. So up to you how crowded you want it to go. I'm gonna leave mine a little bit more airy and natural. If you notice, I didn't fill mine all the way up with water, and I see some stems that aren't touching quite yet, and I've got room, so I'm gonna go put more water in the vase. If you want to and you have ribbon at home, you can, with this style, put some around the neck of the vase. The other one, there's nothing really to grip onto, but you could add a bow if you wanted to. I just like, if it's symmetrical and it's round, adding a bow kind of makes it one-sided versus all the way around, so I tend to leave it off. So with that, this is my symmetrical round arrangement. Hope you guys enjoyed.